You, ladies and gentlemen, interfered with the United States of America 2020 presidential election, knowingly and willingly. That's the bad news. It's going to get worse because this is the investigation part. Later comes the arrest part.
What's up, YouTube? You guys ready for a straight banger today? We're going to go hard into climate change, the Paris Accord. What in the world did Obama get us into? What did Trump take us out of? Why did Biden put us in this economic chokehold to fight climate change and global warming, which seems to be the greatest hoax since the Steele dossier? So if you're ready, hit that like button. Drop some comments below. Drop some comments in the live chat. Let me know what you guys think about climate change. Are we getting played? AOC, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Paris Accord, Barack Obama, the G7, G20 conference. How does it all tie together? Today's live stream is going to blow your mind. So smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, drop some comments below. Get ready, buckle your seatbelts. It's gonna be a wild ride. Let's get it.
And look, I'm not here to deny climate change. I don't think anyone here is. It happens 4 times every year. We're very, very much aware of that.
Now, even the President of the United States is warning that the world is ending. Unless we pass the Green New Deal and legalize abortion until the moment of birth, Joe Biden says climate change will destroy the world.
I don't think so.
Green New Deal is a way that people are now getting organized, and they're behind it. What can you do? You keep pushing on it.
To me, what the Green New Deal says are a couple of really critical points. The first is the urgency of the moment. We're running out of time here.
And when I look at the Green New Deal, it's about a strong response to climate. We stop subsidizing fossil fuel companies and we put that money into green energy. Climate change is real, it is man-made, and we are running out of time. Can I also say no offshore drilling? Brace yourselves. Okay, everybody take a deep breath, feel centered here. I believe in science.
They're political actors and they're making it up. And we know that because turns out people keep track of hurricanes. There are lists of hurricanes, so we know there has been no increase in hurricane frequency in the United States from 1900 to 2020, 120 years. In fact, the number of hurricanes has actually declined over the last century. And in that same period, deaths from hurricanes, other natural disasters, have dropped by 90%. Really? But it's a bigger threat now? Deaths are dropped by 90%? So maybe the goal isn't to save human life. Maybe the goal is not to save the environment, which may be the main reason all the climate solutions destroy the environment. But whatever, ignore the facts.
This is the part that really has me worried. We're running out of runway on this one.
Tell that to the families in Flint whose kids have their blood is ascending in lead levels. Their brains are damaged for the rest of their lives. Call them elitist.
Like, what? What?
No, you are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Every AOC. It's like you want to bleach your eyeballs after you hear. You got to bleach your ears after you hear her speak. I apologize, guys. That 30 seconds of listening to AOC, you're never going to get that back. So the lead pipes that we put underground in Flint, that the city water was running through, those lead pipes, it's climate change. It's not the elitist. It's not a partisan issue. Those dang lead pipes are causing climate change. Jeez, oh, Pete's. Can't make this up.
If carbon pollution is your main aim, then let's talk about managing our forests. Because one catastrophic wildfire emits more carbon emissions in a few short days than every vehicle in my state of Colorado running 24/7 for an entire year.
It's bearing down on us. And every time we get more data from the scientists, they say, remember how bad I told you it was? It's worse than that.
In fact, the most accurate forecast suggests that hurricanes will become 25% less frequent going forward. Those are the data. No one cares about data anymore. We saw that with COVID as well.
And we keep finding more and more evidence of an accelerating problem. So I see this as a problem, a science problem, a problem we've got to fix, but also a moral problem. We cannot be a people who destroy the earth before our children have a chance to live their lives.
So once again, whatever this is, it is not science by definition, it's religion.
I'm in all the way. It's going to have a lot of pieces to it.
I support the Green New Deal.
So stick with us. I'm going to break down exactly what the Paris Accord is, why it's horrible for the prosperity of this country and the European countries. Basically, every NATO country is getting absolutely shafted by their government. It's destroying economies, and it looks like they're doing it all on purpose. But maybe you guys know something I don't know. So drop some comments if you guys think I'm wrong or if I'm going in the wrong direction. I'd love to hear your feedback. But stick with me because we're going to get into it.
Well, let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about how our energy independence lowers inflation. And that's something that this administration surrendered on day one. This is something that they attacked immediately. We should be energy dominant right now. Our natural gas is 42% cleaner than Russia's. So why are you supporting Russia and their energy production and not America? Why are you pro-Putin when it comes to natural gas? Let's export liberty, export freedom around the globe and send our clean LNG to these countries who are currently relying on dictators. And when you're talking about the indigenous communities, well, I invite you all to come to my district where one of our tribes has the first ever zero emissions net power natural gas fired plant. This is innovative. And this is what we should be doing with our other plants, our coal-fired energy plant in Craig, Colorado. I would love to see that transition into what our tribes are doing on their reservations, on their tribal land. And so come out and see what this looks like. See what this net zero energy production actually looks like. Even in Colorado, our coal is arguably the cleanest coal in the world. And climate extremists are sacrificing that at the altar of climate change. And look, I'm not here to deny climate change. I don't think anyone here is. It happens 4 times every year. We're very, very much aware of that. And you know what we can do to lessen pollutants, we're here for it. That's why we are pro natural gas. That's why we want to lower folks' energy bills. Have you seen the price of energy bills lately? That's because we're banning gas appliances. That's because we're pushing all of this green energy that's not efficient, it's not reliable, it's not renewable. And you know, I would love to see an actual study on our fossil fuel production, but not in this manner because there are hidden elements in it. And for that reason, I will be opposing this amendment. And I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Climate change is upon us, and this is truly the existential threat, not just to our country, but to the entire planet.
Madam President, I rise today to discuss climate change, which is a great crisis currently facing our country and our planet. That's the other part this says. We gotta make change, and we've got to do it urgently, now.
We have got to make change, we've got to make big change, and we've got to do it fast. We're running out of time.
You'd better pass the Democratic Party's agenda. If you don't, you are joining, quote, the single most existential threat to humanity you've ever faced, including nuclear weapons. It's code red. Watch.
That's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger. The health of our citizens and our communities is literally at stake. The UN's leading international climate scientists call the latest climate report nothing less than, quote, code red for humanity. Let me say it again. Code red for humanity. And making the largest investment ever, $2.3 billion to help communities across the country build infrastructure that's designed to withstand the full range of disasters we've been seeing up to today. Extreme heat, drought, flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes.
So that's not science, that's theology, but it's also politics. You'll note that Joe Biden said we're spending $2.3 billion to fix it. To, quote, help communities build infrastructure to withstand disasters. Okay, $2.3 billion. Where'd all that money go? No one ever asked. Well, it turns out a lot of it went to something called the Justice 40 Initiative. It's called the Justice 40 Initiative because 40% of the money, tax dollars, goes toward combating something called environmental racism in disadvantaged communities, meaning predominantly Latinx, Indigenous, and African American neighborhoods. In other words, this is yet more federal funding that excludes the majority of the population based on their race. That's fully illegal. That is a crime under civil rights law, which you all agree is good.
So I think I kind of have an idea what's going on, but I can't really pinpoint it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Are these... So let's take a break here for a second. Let's see if you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a corrupt government that is taking our tax dollars and they're sending it and they're funneling it to these organizations or these nonprofits or these science fact checkers. And these companies are making profit because our government is paying them to be profitable. So it doesn't matter if they actually do a good job or they put out factual information, they put out real evidence and real scientific proof. Doesn't matter because they're funded by the government. So their company is going to be extremely profitable, obviously. And then they're going to take those profits and they're going to funnel those profits where? Back into the campaign of whatever political party supports them. Do you see this vicious cycle that we're in? We are in a rat race that is designed by the corrupt politicians to constantly keep you in the system, constantly chasing your tail, never able to save up enough money, never able to get ahead, always behind, living paycheck to paycheck by design. By design. What is the easiest way to drive the price of everything up? Drive the price of fuel up. Drive the price of natural resources up. Why do you think we're all trying to fight climate change and this energy, this Green New Deal BS? This is exactly what Trump wanted to get us out of. So we're going to get into that right now.
President Trump made clear today a specific group was top of mind as he made his decision. Coal miners.
The agreement doesn't eliminate coal jobs. It just transfers those jobs out of America and the United States. This agreement is less about the climate and more about other countries gaining a financial advantage over the United States.
The very point of anti-climate change efforts, bringing on job loss, became a sticking point for Hillary Clinton throughout 2016. Like when this out-of-work coal miner asked why Clinton wanted him unemployed.
I just want to know how you can say you're going to put a lot of coal miners out of jobs and then come in here and tell us how you're going to be our friend, because those people out there don't see you as a friend.
President Trump following through on his campaign promise this week by withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement. It's a move that has brought controversy from not just D.C. partisans, but also within his own cabinet.
Wow, that did it. The left immediately became hysterical, even more than usual. Keep in mind that this was a non-binding, unenforceable agreement whose effects, even if every nation involved followed the agreement to the letter, cannot be known with any precision. It doesn't matter. The world just ended, literally, as they say. Billionaire Democratic donor Tom Steyer described Trump's decision as, quote, assault and battery on the future of the American people. CNN warned its viewers to expect mass extinctions, flooding in the streets of New York City, the physical annihilation of the Marshall Islands. The ACLU, meanwhile, somehow concluded that leaving the agreement was, and this is a quote, a massive step back for racial justice and an assault on communities of color. Didn't explain how. And then there was cable news. My gosh, the long faces, the grave intonations, the florid and outraged proclamations. It was like somebody died, millions of them, actually.
All right, so before we get into actually explaining what the Paris Accord is and what a sham this is for the United States, and not just the United States, but all NATO countries. Anybody that's involved in this climate change, Green New Deal, Paris Accord, we're getting played so hard. But I want you to see how the media was attacking Trump. Now, this is just one issue where Trump was putting the American people first, and what happens? The deep state, the swamp, they do everything that they can just to attack Trump from every single angle. And they've been doing it over. It doesn't matter what the issue is. That's what this is all about. UFOs, same thing. And I'll talk about UFOs and why they're bad here later. but let's just keep right into it. Let me play a few clips of the media attacking Trump, and then I'm going to get into some clips from Mark Moss, and I'm actually going to explain what the Paris Accord is, and it's going to blow your mind what a sham this is for the United States. Hopefully you guys are sticking with me. Hopefully you guys can do me a huge favor and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. The more
on a sunny day in the Rose Garden, what could be defined and construed as a dark speech.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world.
I have such rage and sadness. We just watched a dangerous little man give a very, very scary speech.
One of the most bleak depictions of America's role in the world as environmental partners.
So he is not helping the forgotten American. He is hurting them. Their kids will have worse asthma in the summer. The president who talked about putting America first has now put America last.
Well, we're no longer obviously talking about science here. What you're watching is a priesthood defending its faith. The essence of science, meanwhile, is skepticism that's relentlessly testing what you think you know to make certain you actually know it. People who ran the space program didn't know everything, and they knew it. That's not happening here. It's not allowed. Press for explanations as to what they're talking about, and you're attacked as immoral, a denier.
All right, so the Paris Accord, Obama put us in, Trump pulled us out the very first day. Biden put us back in. So what is it? So we are officially rejoined February 19th, and I want to break down what most people think it is, and then we're going to talk about what it really is and what it really entails, because if you want to know what's going to happen over the next 10 years, what Agenda 2030 is, this is the piece that you have been missing, okay? So what is it? Let's talk about what it is. So one, it is a legally binding treaty, all right? So this is, the countries have jumped in and it's legally binding. Now what does that really mean? Each country is legally obligated to each other, but I'm pretty sure that governments break promises all the time. But it's legally binding. Of course, like I said, it was originated in 2016 when President Obama was there. 195 countries are supposedly into it. But really, that's the high level stuff. What is it really? All right, what's the goal? What are they trying to achieve with supposedly with the Paris Accord? Well, the goal is to limit global warming, sounds great, to below 2 degrees Celsius to what they consider pre-industrial levels. So what does that mean? All right, so I'll just blow this up. This is, again, I want to give you the facts. So this is directly from their website. Again, legally binding, limit global warming 2 degrees, preferably to 1.5 degrees below what it was pre-industrial. All right, so we're going to talk about that. What the heck is pre-industrial? All right, so who is involved in this? Who are the key players? Now, the IPCC, keep that in mind, okay? We're going to be talking about the IPCC, and that stands for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Sounds pretty important, doesn't it? And again, that was founded in 1988. So they've been pushing this agenda for quite a long time, since 1988, and now it's all being wrapped up in the Paris Accord 2016. All right, again, and then it's backed by the WMO. We've talked about that. Okay, so just remember the IPCC. We're going to come back to that. That's an important piece to understand. Now, first of all, we talked about the goal is to bring global warming down. Okay, it's great. I guess it's too hot. If you live in places where it's cold, I guess that's pretty good. We just moved from California to Puerto Rico, and we like it because it's warmer than California. So good is relative. Good, bad for who? I like Puerto Rico because it's warmer than California, so an extra degree sounds pretty good to me. But anyway, pre-industrial levels. So let's take a look at just this goal, all right? So first off, they want to bring it down to pre-industrial. Now what's pre-industrial? So there was the Industrial Revolution. There's been 5 technological revolutions in about the last 250 years. The Industrial Revolution, we brought people out of the farms into the factories. That was the first one, and that was between 1850 to 1900. All right, that's what they say. Here's the problem with this right off the bat. Okay, so right off the bat we have a problem because per Google and per Wikipedia, the Industrial Revolution was actually 1760 to 1840. And so the reason why this is a problem is they want to bring down it to below pre-industrial of 1850, but the problem is the Industrial Revolution was already over by 1850. So it makes sense, right? Sure, it makes sense. Like, hey, we should bring the temperature back to before we had all the machines and all the factories, because that's when all the emissions started, right? So let's go back to before that. But the problem is the Industrial Revolution actually started before that. So their goal right off the bat is wrong. The other problem that we have with this is that the steam engine, the engines, which are supposedly producing all the carbon, was actually out in 1784. Here you can see James Watt, father of the modern steam engine. Here, 1844. Again, I'm sorry, 1784, which is about 75 years before they started calculating. The other thing is that we need to take into a lot of other information. All right, I'm just setting the stage here. We're gonna go deep. But we have to look at global warming, and this is the global average temperatures, and you can see that they want to go back before here, but you can see that right here the temperatures were pretty flat. So they want to, and then you can see them start taking off here. So it might make sense to start right here, right? But like they want to start pre-here when temperatures were already flat.
All right, so you guys got to do me a favor before we keep watching. The man speaking right now, this is Mark Moss. If you want to talk about somebody who actually understands the economy, understands markets, understands exactly what the World Economic Forum is planning, how they're planning it, he exposes more about the corrupt globalists and elites than anybody that I've ever seen. His investing advice is freaking phenomenal. He understands crypto. He understands the economy. One hell of a guy. Please swing over here and follow Mark Moss.
So the baselines are all off. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is that the majority of the Earth temperatures, per NASA scientists, really come from solar and volcanic flares. So volcanoes erupt, they put tons of carbon up into the air, ash, it blocks the sun, temperatures come down, they come back up. So the solar, the way the suns move, the way the volcanoes happen, that has more to do with the Earth's temperature than anything else, per the scientists. And what we can see here is this is a reconstruction of that based off of scientists. Now, how do they really know what the solar and volcanic flares were from 1700s? But they've put this together. And what we can see again is up until this period of about 1750, it had stayed pretty cool. And now it's started to go up. So is this responsible for it? Is it the steam engines? Is it the Industrial Revolution? So we don't have this baseline. So that's just for starters, all right? So let's just set the stage with that, all right? But the goal, either way, 2 degrees Celsius below pre-industrial levels. Okay, great. Will it actually work? Let's take a look at that. So here's what we have to do in order to achieve those goals. All right, so we need to go to 60% renewable for the entire world. Again, remember this date, by 2030. So we need to transfer over the next 9 years all of the energy in the entire world, from your cars, your airplanes, your boat, everything. 60% of it needs to go to renewables. So we need electric airplanes. We need to reduce coal by 78%. Now, coal is where we generate most electricity around the world because it's very, very cheap. So when you live in poor countries, well, anywhere for that matter, if you're a poor person, you need cheap energy. Otherwise, you can't drive your car, your food prices go up, you can't travel, those types of things. So we need to reduce coal by 78%, our cheapest. We need to reduce oil by 37% and natural gas by 25%. And then, remember what the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum said, that you're gonna eat less meat? That's because they say that farmers have to cut methane by 24%, again, by 2030. That's where we need to go to do that, they say, right? Where are we? Well, the Department of Energy forecasts that by 27% by 2050. So they say 60% by 2030. The DOE says maybe we can do 27% by 2050. It's quite a ways off. They also say that the demand for coal is rising. More of the world is coming up. We're bringing people out of poverty. We're bringing people up into prosperity. They have factories and jobs and they can shop now. And so coal demand is actually rising. Natural gas is climbing, right? And as those people come up, as the rest of the world comes up, they need to eat. And so we're gonna need to continue to feed them. So that's where we are versus where we need to go. Now, if you start to get the point, maybe this seems like a losing battle. So let's take a look at this. So in 2020, as of last year, we're already 1.2 degrees warmer than pre-industrial levels. So they want us to be 2 degrees below, which means now it's like 3.2 that we have to reduce down, all right? Now, is that possible? Well, let's take a look. Don't take my word for this. Again, let's go to the facts. So we can see here that this says that global temperatures are already 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The UN admits that the Paris climate deal was a fraud. meaning that we won't be able to achieve those goals, but it gets even deeper than that. And of course, I'm gonna break that down for you. I'm just trying to set the stage here. We can see that CO2 emissions that the nations pledged. So I'm going to explain how this works, but basically the nations said, this is what I'm going to do. And this country says, well, this is what I'm going to do. There's no standard of what the countries have to do. We're going to break that down. But basically what they're pledging to do brings us nowhere close to where we need to go. All right. And then we can see James Hansen. He was the father of climate change. James Hansen, the father of climate change awareness, calls Paris talks a fraud. Same thing. The talks to reach this deal beyond 2020 is there's no actions, no promises, not going to happen. All right. So again, I'm setting the stage, but this is all going to come together, and you're going to understand where Agenda 2030 is taking us and how this all unfolds. All right. So are countries committed? Like I said, there's no standard. Like everyone has to do this.
Yo, Big Brian, I appreciate you, man. $5. Thanks, homie.
No, instead, each country just says, well, I'll do this or I'll do this. And then there's, of course, something that's different between what are they actually saying and what are they actually doing. So let's take a look at this. Are countries really committed to this goal? So to see if countries are really committed to the goal, the first thing we want to do is let's get a baseline, right? So if you're trying to go somewhere, it's important to understand where you're going, but then you have to understand where you are today. What's the baseline? And then we can track our progress from there. So let's look at the baseline. This is the CO2 emissions broken down by country, the top 10 emitters. Now I have this chart we'll bring up pretty big here for you so you can see what this is. And as you might guess, maybe, I don't know, United States is sitting here in number 2. So it is a big emitter. But what you might notice is that China is, of course, number 1. And China is number 1, and they are double what the US is. So really, if anybody should be cutting down, you would think it would be China. Typically, when you're trying to achieve something big, you try to take action on the biggest thing first, where you can make the most progress. And so the US is in number 2, but China is 2 times larger. So that's just the baseline. That's where we're at. Back to now, each country doesn't have a mandate. Each country pledges what they're going to do. As a matter of fact, these are called NDCs. This stands for nationally determined contribution. So I'm a country, and this is what I contribute to this goal, and each country does that. And basically what they are is they're a 5-year agreement where a country says, I'm going to do this over the next 5 years. These are my goals, and these are my strategies to achieve it. And of course, these are how I'm going to measure this. And this is where it all starts coming together. So the US, which is the number 2 emitter, it's a big emitter, it's a big country. And we'll get into broken down by capita and stuff like that, but it's the biggest emitter. But China is double that. But the US has the biggest goal. The goal that the US has pledged is to reduce CO2 by 28% from 2005 level. So by 2025, which is 4 years from now, the goal is to be 28% less than they were a decade ago. And you can see per the Paris Accord website, this is their pledge. So this is the USA, this is the Paris Agreement, this is what's been ratified, 26 to 28% below 2005 levels. That's their goal, or 10 to 17% below 1990 levels. So that's what they pledged. Sounds good, right? It's a good baseline. Now let's take a look and see what the other countries have pledged. All right, now just real quick, the US cutting back, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about real quick before we jump into other countries. So the CO2 per capita. So what does that mean? So the United States has a lot of people, 330 million people about. Other countries don't have anywhere near that. So rather than look at the amount of output or CO2 emissions per country, you want to look at it per person. Because if a country hardly has any people, of course it's going to have less emissions, right? So what we can see is the CO2 per capita, per person, has actually been declining over the last 20 years. As a matter of fact, the CO2 change is down. It's down 30% since 2020. So the US, of course, if you live in the United States, you know this, right? The gas has been getting better. We've been moving to renewables. Every company, the auto manufacturer, they're all getting squeezed by the EPA to be more and more carbon friendly, which is great. I have nothing against that. But look, we are down already 30% since 2020. Now, we'll explain what this means for you. And so we've been declining for the last 20 years, as you can see, the steady decline. That's great. The US has been doing their part. You've been doing your part for the United States. You've been paying more for your gas. You've been paying more for everything in order to achieve those goals. That's good. What about India and China? Let's look at them. So India's target is to go 35% below 2005 CO2, which sounds really good, right? But not per capita, not by total, but by GDP, as a percentage of GDP. So you could say, hey, we emit 100 tons of carbon, or we emit 10 pounds of carbon per person, per capita, or you can say that our emission is a percentage of our GDP. I'm going to talk about that. So India's target is 35% below their carbon to GDP, and China's goal, you're going to love this, China's goal is to peak by 2030. So if you remember from the chart, they're already emitting double, twice as much as the US, which is down 30%, and planning to go down another 30%. Not China, they're already double, and their goal is to peak. That means they're still going up. Let me show you this. So this is, again, from their website. So this is Paris, India, all right? 30 to 35% below 2005 emissions by GDP. So this means nothing. So let me explain what this means. So if I say that carbon emissions are 10% of GDP, and my goal is to get that down by 30%, well, I could cut down on carbon, okay? Or two, I could raise my GDP. Now, if you know anything about what's going on in the world right now, especially after COVID, a lot of the manufacturing, we saw how fragile the supply chains were in China. So a lot of the manufacturing is coming out of China and it's starting to go to other places. That way the supply chains aren't completely dependent on China. Now, who is the biggest recipient of all this? India. So India's economy is booming. India's economy is the next China. They're growing super fast. If you look to invest in international markets, China is a place that you would want to be. I'm sorry, India is a place that you want to be. So their GDP is growing. So they're not trying to reduce their emissions at all. All they have to do, they can continue to raise their emissions as long as their GDP is growing faster. And of course, the GDP is a number they state and can be whatever they want it to be.
So did I tell you that Mark Moss is freaking amazing? Now it's pretty crazy and he's gonna get into it a little bit more here, but a picture how much carbon the United States is outputting right now. If the United States went completely neutral and we didn't put one more ounce of carbon out into the atmosphere, that would not impact the damage that China alone is gonna do, or India alone is gonna do. So why is every country in NATO following this Paris Accord and bending over to these globalists so that they can force feed us their climate change agenda when the science and data does not back it up? Period. None of this global warming stuff makes sense. Now, I definitely think polluting hurts the environment, so I'm not saying that. But I'm saying this big overall global warming crisis that they're trying to force feed us, things just aren't adding up. Mark explains it. Check this out.
So that's interesting. The next thing is, now let's look at China's. Again, this is directly from the website. I try to give you the facts. This is China for the Paris Agreement. Peak CO2 emissions by 2030. So again, like I said, they are going to continue to go up as the United States is, we'll call it, hamstringing themselves to bring it down. Now, let's compare these, all right? So the US is decreasing per capita. India's output is already up 100% since 2000. China's output is up 150%. So China's up 150, India's up 100, the US is down 30, all right? Now let's look at this in some charts because I want to show you this in some data. So this is the per capita. So this is, again, per person. It's not right to look at the total amount. We want to look at this per person. And we can see that here's China. This is China. This is India per person. And this is the US going down. So the US has been getting better and better and better, and these countries have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. All right, now that's the percentage change, and this is the actual amount, the total amount. So you might say, well, the percentage change isn't fair because you know, the US was bigger or something. Okay, well, let's look at the total then. So again, if we look at the total, you can see that the United States is down. And you can see that the total amount of both these, as I said, about 100 and 150%, all right? Now, why does all this matter? Why do you care about this? Well, you might care if you earn money and you have to pay for your family to live and you earn a living and you're trying to save for retirement, you might care. All right, so the reason why is because the cost of the compliance. So why do we stay in? Why is the US continuing to make it harder, make it more expensive for businesses to operate, for consumers to buy products when other countries aren't doing anything? And as a matter of fact, they're going up. Now, per the SBA, they say that compliance costs for the United States are $1.75 trillion it costs just for the compliance alone for this. And they say that that's about 12 to 14% of our GDP is spent trying to comply with this, all right? So why stay in? Why would we stay in this, all right? So let's talk about that. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is about the NGOs. These are the non-government organizations. These are non-elected leaders. These are people that you don't get to vote for. You don't even know who they are, right? And basically what they do is they're the ones that are setting up this plan, and they want companies that produce goods, that produce emissions, to they're going to allow them to produce even more emissions, and then they're going to offset that with carbon credits. I'm going to break this down. But where do they get the carbon credits from? You're a country, you want to emit carbon, you have to buy carbon credits to offset that. So you're going to buy them from me. But where did I get them from? From thin air. Let's break this down for you because it is interesting, all right? So here is kind of how this works. So here's the countries. So this is, you know, USA. This is all the countries here. And these countries have businesses. Let's make it a building, right? So they have a building, they have businesses, and those businesses produce goods, and those goods get sold to people like you and I, all right? So as these businesses produce goods that they get sold to you and I, they produce emissions, all right? All right, we want to bring that down, whatever, okay? By 2030, over here, guess what? We still have businesses that are still producing goods, that are still selling products to you and I. It's the same thing. Over here, as I said, China is actually going to peak. They're going up. India is going up. So in 2030, under this Paris Accord, India, China, other countries are still going up. What is the difference between now and then? It's not reducing emissions. Here's where it comes in. Remember I talked about the IPCC. All right, this is where the IPCC comes in. So now countries can emit emissions. By 2030, countries still emit emissions. The difference is now they have to buy carbon credits. That's the difference. So where do they buy these carbon credits? Again, from the IPCC. Where does the IPCC get them? Out of thin air. As a matter of fact, they create this exchange over here where these are bought and sold on Wall Street, and they make money. How much money? They make trillions of dollars creating these carbon credits, trading them around. Corporations trade them, Wall Street trades them, and they buy and sell them to these countries. So the difference is over here, countries are producing emissions. Over here, countries are producing emissions. The emissions didn't go down. But per the Paris Accord, the only thing that changed is now these countries have to pay trillions of dollars to do this. Interesting, huh? Now, why? Why would these countries decide to pay? I mean, I get it, right? If we're all noble and we want to save the world and let's all reduce emissions, and I'm all for that. But as I'm saying, they're not going to reduce emissions. As a matter of fact, their emissions are going up. So why would they just decide to pay? Like, why would they willing to do that? I'm a sovereign country. Why would I pay? Well, that is where it starts to get even more interesting. So let's break it down. So why would countries go along? Well, the reason why is because the U.S., and this is why it was so important for the U.S. to be in this. The U.S. is the one that puts up the money for the slush fund. That money is then used to pay countries, and the influencers of those countries drag countries in. So let me show you back to this, what I'm talking about here. So the U.S. puts up about $100 billion in a fund. So that's a big $100 billion fund. The U.S. puts it up. If you're a U.S. taxpayer, you're putting it up. That money is then going to pay influence. So each country has their their people, right? You know, lobbying and governments get paid off to pass certain laws. So each country has these influencers, and this money is then going to these countries like, hey, here's 10 billion for you, and 2 billion for you, and 5 billion for you, and 700 million for you, if you can get your country on board. At the same time, we do massive media. The world is gonna die, the world is gonna die, everybody needs to get in, the Paris Accord, the Paris Accord. And so it's this massive PR push at the same time. And hey, I'm all for saving the environment. I love the environment as much as anybody, but if the goal is not to bring emissions down, then what is the goal? Remember we talked about this? Let me break it down. All right, so why would countries go along? As I said, the US puts in the money, $100 billion. That money goes to these developing countries to get them on board and get them to buy into the Paris Accord. Sort of like, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm not gonna tell you, but I'll ask you a question. How do you think it was possible for all the governments of the world to lock their people down at the exact same time at the snap of a finger? In unison. I mean, when has the world ever been coordinated on anything? Boom, at the same time. Then think about the WHO, World Health Organization. Remember this? And then think about how President of Belarus and lots of other smaller countries have said that the WHO was going to pay them $900 million to lock their country down. I'll leave you with that, let you think about that.
So now is it all making sense? Can you imagine looking back when you're like, why is every country locked down all at the same time, simultaneously? Because they were getting paid by the World Economic Forum, by the WHO, by the United Nations to lock their countries down. $900 million. So if you're a corrupt politician and somebody's about to write you a check for $900 million, are you really worried about the economic impacts that's going to have on your country? Pretty crazy. Sweden never locked down. Did they have it worse than us? They destroyed this country. They locked us all down. Why? Who did that benefit? What changed when COVID came out? How we vote, where we can vote, when we can vote, how long we can vote for? Pretty crazy, right? All these things changed because we went into an emergency. So now, knowing what you know now, do you really still think that this wasn't all by design, or do you? I'm just throwing out some questions. You guys drop some comments in the live chat, let me know. It's pretty crazy.
So 2030, the agenda is 2030. 2030 is the big payday. 2030 is the key year. 2030, remember China, India get to keep going up, and 2030 is the key year. That's when they have to start buying their credits. The UN has decided this. This is the Sustainable Development Goals Program. This is off the UN's website directly. And you know, the 2030 agenda, we've been talking about it over and over and over, and now you understand what the 2030 agenda is. Now, what can you expect? Now, regardless of where you live in the world, whether you're in the United States or not, this is what's important, because what can you expect? Well, as emissions have to come down, or you have to pay for carbon credits, where is that money going to come from? Well, that means that companies, businesses will have to spend more money to produce goods. So that means production costs go up. Well, if production costs go up, well, guess what? Then consumers' prices go up. And then governments are going to have to pay carbon credits, so their prices go up. So goods and services get more expensive, and then taxes get to go up on top of that.
So that's not science, that's theology, but it's also politics. You'll note that Joe Biden said we're spending $2.3 billion to fix it, to quote, help communities build infrastructure to withstand disasters. Okay, $2.3 billion. Where'd all that money go? No one ever asked. Well, it turns out a lot of it went to something called the Justice 40 Initiative. It's called the Justice 40 Initiative because 40% of the money, tax dollars, goes toward combating something called environmental racism in disadvantaged communities, meaning predominantly Latinx, Indigenous, and African American neighborhoods. In other words, this is yet more federal funding that excludes the majority of the population based on their race. That's fully illegal. That is a crime under civil rights law, which you all agree is good. Federal courts have already blocked other efforts by the Biden administration to do this kind of thing, but this effort slipped through. Why? Because it's climate. Now, you'd think the DOJ Civil Rights Division would notice if we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in a racially exclusive way against federal law, but the Attorney General of the United States has no problem with it because the climate cult demands it.
Consistent with the President's executive order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad, we are issuing a comprehensive environmental justice enforcement strategy. Communities of color, indigenous communities, and low-income communities often bear the brunt of the harm caused by environmental crime, pollution, and climate change.
So, of course, there's no science or data behind any of those claims. They're political slogans. They're completely made up. They're not real. But it's happening anyway. So we're directing natural disaster aid on the basis of skin color. That's insane. As one physician in that system put it, quote, "For a long time, there was a notion that the greenhouse effect caused in healthcare settings was an inevitable and unavoidable cost of providing patient care. But we have learned that reducing anesthetic gas flow is one of the many ways healthcare can lessen its contribution to the global warming crisis." Think about that for a second. If you're trying to reduce your carbon footprint, if you really believe carbon was the main poison in our environment, which of course is not, but if you thought it was, getting rid of anesthesia or reducing the amount of painkillers you give to people while cutting them with scalpels would probably be the last thing you would do.
You're telling them that those kids are trying to get on a plane to Davos? People are dying. This is serious. This should not be a partisan issue. This is about our constituents and all of our lives. Iowa, Nebraska, broad swaths of the Midwest are drowning right now, underwater. Farms, towns that will never be recovered and never come back. Science should not be partisan. We are facing a national crisis. And if we do not ascend to that crisis, if we do not ascend to the levels in which we were threatened at the Great Depression, when we were threatened in World War II, if we do not ascend to those levels, if we tell the American public that we are more willing to invest and bail out big banks than we are willing to invest in our farmers and our urban families, then I don't know what we're here doing.
I wish I could do those hands. You know, next live stream, I'm just gonna. And y'all didn't hit that like button. You not hitting that like button is an existential threat. I'm telling you right now, this is serious. This is serious. You ain't gonna hit that like button? Oh, man. I'm gonna tell you what, woohoo! World War II, she says. This is an existential? I can't say it either, so I can't blame her, but do you think Biden can say existential? Existential?
I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight and then watch the hair come back up again.
Oh, hell no. I sound like Biden. Jeez, oh, Pete. You guys get where we're going with this. This is how the globalists control us. There always has to be a crisis. There has to be a world-ending threat. That's what they do. And this is exactly why Trump said this.
Our brand new USMCA is the result of the broadest coalition ever assembled for a trade agreement. Manufacturing, agriculture, and labor all strongly endorsed the deal. And as you know, it just passed in Congress overwhelmingly. It shows how to solve the 21st century challenge we all face, protecting intellectual property, expanding digital trade, reshoring lost jobs, and ensuring rising wages and living standards. The United States has also concluded a great new trade deal with Japan, approximately $40 billion, and completely renegotiated our deal with South Korea. We're also negotiating many other transactions with many other countries. To protect our security and our economy, we are also boldly embracing American energy independence. The United States is now by far the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world, by far. It's not even close. While many European countries struggle with crippling energy costs, the American energy revolution is saving American families $2,500 every year in lowering electric bills and numbers that people said couldn't happen. And also, very importantly, prices at the pump. We've been so successful that the United States no longer needs to import energy from hostile nations. With an abundance of American natural gas now available, our European allies no longer have to be vulnerable to unfriendly energy suppliers either. We urge our friends in Europe to use America's vast supply and achieve true energy security. with U.S. companies and researchers leading the way, we are on the threshold of virtually unlimited reserves of energy, including from traditional fuels, LNG, clean coal, next-generation nuclear power, and gas hydrate technologies. At the same time, I'm proud to report the United States is among the cleanest air and drinking water on Earth, and we're going to keep it that way. And we just came out with a report that at this moment, it's the cleanest it's been in the last 40 years. We're committed to conserving the majesty of God's creation and the natural beauty of our world. Today, I'm pleased to announce the United States will join 1 Trillion Trees initiative being launched here at the World Economic Forum. 1 trillion trees. And in doing so, we will continue to show strong leadership in restoring, growing, and better managing our trees and our forests. This is not a time for pessimism. This is a time for optimism. Fear and doubt is not a good thought process, because this is a time for tremendous hope and joy and optimism and action. But to embrace the possibilities of tomorrow, we must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of the apocalypse. They are the heirs of yesterday's foolish fortune tellers, and I have them, and you have them, and we all have them. And they want to see us do badly, but we don't let that happen. They predicted an overpopulation crisis in the 1960s, mass starvation in the 70s, and an end of oil in the 1990s. These alarmists always demand the same thing: absolute power to dominate, transform, and control every aspect of our lives. We will never let radical socialists destroy our economy, wreck our country, or eradicate our liberty. America will always be the proud, strong, and unyielding bastion of freedom. In America, we understand what the pessimists refuse to see: that a growing and vibrant market economy focused on the future lifts the human spirit and excites creativity, strong enough to overcome any challenge by far. The great scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century, from penicillin to high-yield wheat to modern transportation, and lifted living standards and saved billions of lives around the world. And we're continuing to work on things that you'll be hearing about in the near future, that even today, sitting here right now, you wouldn't believe it's possible that we have found the answers. You'll be hearing about it, but we have found answers to things that people said would not be possible, certainly not in a very short period of time. But the wonders of the last century will pale in comparison to what today's young innovators will achieve, because they are doing things that nobody thought even feasible to begin. We continue to embrace technology, not to shun it. When people are free to innovate, millions will live longer, happier, healthier lives. For 3 years now, America has shown the world that the path to a prosperous future begins with putting workers first, choosing growth, and freeing entrepreneurs to bring their dreams to life. For anyone who doubts what is possible in the future, we need only look at the towering achievements of the past.
So do you guys understand exactly what's actually taking place right now? The lifeline, the lifeblood of a nation, is their ability to produce cheap energy. Just think about when you go to the gas station and you pay $4 per gallon versus you paying $1.50. Gasoline right now, if Trump was still in office, and let's get this straight, if Trump was in office and he wasn't surrounded by rhinos and radical communist Democrats, what Trump would have been able to accomplish, I think gas would have been less than $1. We would have been the #1 supplier in the world for energy. And the amount of money that our government would have made and been able to tax other countries selling our energy and exporting our energy, that's how Trump was able to give these tax cuts. Why was Trump able to do these massive tax cuts and it didn't hurt the government and their budget? Why? Because our government was going to be making more money by taxing these other countries that were exporting or importing their products into the United States. They're able to bring them in pretty much scot-free. So it's cheaper for companies like Apple, who's China lover, to have their products produced in sweatshops over in China in these third world countries versus right here. And we've already seen where they're getting this cobalt and these cobalt mines for these lithium batteries. It's absolutely disgusting. These kids over in Africa, what they're having to do. I mean, just check this out. Think about this for a second. I mean, if you just fill up your gas tank once a week and your car uses 20 gallons and you fill up your tank once a week, that's 1,040 gallons. So let's just go with 1,000. So if I just say myself, right, my Hummer holds about my Hummer. So if we just take the average American, right? My Hummer holds about 22 gallons. Say I use a tank a week. Let's just say 20 gallons. And you use 1 tank a week. There's 52 weeks in a year. So that's about 1,040 miles. So that's about 1,040 gallons. When Trump was in office and we were paying $1, say $1 would have been $1,040 per year. Now, times that by $4 a gallon when Biden's in office, you're looking at about $4,160. Now, if you live in a state like Michigan, what happens? Times 0.06%. So the government actually just made roughly an extra 149. So our government made roughly an extra 200 bucks just taxing that gas. Now, check this out. So you see right here, so this was 2015, government made about 4 trillion. 2017, 4 trillion. Then in 2019, we went up a little bit, but look what was happening. Taxes were going down into 2020, and they were going to continue to go down and down and down and down. That's income that our government is taxing us, the citizens. Now look at under Biden. So all of this inflation, what has inflation done? Who profits the most from inflation? The United States government. So just to give you guys an idea of what our government's doing to us right now. See over here, governments didn't use to tax their citizens to death. And it wasn't really until Nixon took us off the gold standard, and look what that did to this country. And look at how much money they're making off of us right now. While we're barely getting by, they want to raise taxes so that they can make even more money. Now, let me put that into context for you. Let me really blow your mind. So from the beginning of time, from the beginning of fiat currency until 2021, our government never printed. There wasn't more than $5 trillion out in circulation. From the beginning of time, $5 trillion. 5 trillion. All the currency printed from the beginning of time never amounted to more than $5 trillion. Check this out. So you see 2022 right here, our government made $5 trillion. So you're telling me from the beginning of time till 2021, so over what? Basically, I think currency was started in 18 something. So over a 120-year period, 140-year period, our government never printed $5 trillion. And somehow our government made $5 trillion this year, and they need to raise taxes on us. That's not enough for our radical government. They're taxing us to death, guys. There really is. There's no way that you can save in fiat currency. And that's what Trump knew. And everybody knows it, except for the mainstream media wants to continue to brainwash you to thinking that you need to pay more taxes, or that the wealthiest and the most elite need to pay more taxes. It's all just a scam, guys. They're just playing us. It's what they do. They gaslight us, they lie to us, they manipulate us, they get us into conflicts with other countries in the name of democracy. Our government's out of control. I don't know how else to better say it. Got to show Trump some love. We got to keep fighting for Trump. Every single American citizen should be rallying behind Trump, trying to educate their friends and family who don't understand exactly what our government's doing to us. Because if we stand together and we come together, and we have to do it quick. If you didn't see what just happened in Ohio, oh my gosh. Check out my Rumble channel. We spent about 2 hours covering every single video, exactly what was caused that, exactly how that was caused. You see Biden, guess what he did? What did Biden do? How did he divert the railroad strike? What was the railroad strike about? Workers being overworked, not safe work conditions, not getting time off, not having somebody to come in and fill your position if another person didn't show up. Why? Because they wanted to maximize the profits for the railroad, period, plain and simple. And instead of being able to strike and protest those work conditions, Biden had Congress pass a law that made it illegal for the rail workers to go on strike. And now what just happened in Ohio? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yet again, Biden and these radical Democrats, what they are doing to this country, Trump might not be able to save us from it. Did you see how bad things are getting and how quick they're getting worse? You guys better really wake up and start educating yourself and educating your friends, stocking up on food. I hate being that doom and gloomer, but if Trump doesn't get back in office, what are these radical people willing to do to prevent freedom from happening? Guys, it's not good. Really not good. So hopefully you guys are hanging in there. Stay tough. I'm going to jump into the Q&A, so hopefully you guys drop those comments, hit that like button, and let's talk about it. What up? How's everybody doing today? Thank you guys for showing up to the show. Teresa, Steven, Jason, Asta White, D, what up? Good to see everybody. Fam, good to see you. Asta White, what up? Brian D, thank you for the donation, man. I appreciate it big time. Nadine, I wish Donald would come in Canada. I know, and that's the crazy part is what Trump was doing for America was also going to benefit every other country. And you heard it in his speech, and I really wanted to play. I mean, I could play that speech 100 times over, but that's exactly what Trump was doing, right? So can you quote scripture on this platform? Absolutely. I don't see why not. I played the national anthem. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I think I was close on that. Deliver us from, evil, something like that. It's been a minute. I got scripture tattooed all over my body. New style is working well. I enjoy it. Thanks, Jason. Thank you. It's nice. I get to hang out with you guys and chat for a little bit in the beginning, and then when people watch it after the fact, the videos do a lot better because I'm not sitting there mumbling for the first 30 minutes, you know? So, but this is the whole point, right? When energy is cheap, you can export that energy anywhere. And that's exactly what the United States is going to do. All of these countries are basically in a chokehold because who do you get your oil from? From OPEC. And what happened when Biden started draining the oil reserves? To manipulate the market. What did OPEC do? Okay, you're gonna drain your petroleum reserves by 10%. Cool. We're gonna dial back production by 10%. That's exactly what they did to us. So now we're in bed with like Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and we're bartering to get oil from them when we could have been producing it ourselves. All Biden had to do was literally just sit there and do nothing. If he would have just left Trump policies in place, the United States would have been thriving. Now, if you could only imagine how long it's going to take Trump to recover and fix the damage that these people have done to this country, it's unbelievable. I tried to post Proverbs 14. Let me see. Let me pull it up here for you. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't show. I don't know. I have certain words blocked. So if there was like a symbol that all the bots use, I block those symbols. Am I saying that right? Righteous, Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. How do I say that? In this simple verse, we established a rule or a standard composed of two alternatives. There is no middle ground. I agree. Trump was so good. So when the United States would have been able to export energy, I mean, we could have had gas as low as 50 cents a dollar. And then we could have exported it anywhere in the world for so cheap. I mean, if they could build the Nord Stream pipeline from Russia over to Europe, I mean, we could have built we were already building the Keystone pipeline. We need to get back to I just don't know how much worse it can get. Like there's been points where I'm like, all right, all America just needs to see the corruption, and these people are going to get arrested, and we're going to have Trump back in office. So like the mountains of evidence are there. I'm still not sure if there's like a point that Trump's going to step in with the military and take back the White House, or if we're going to have to ride this all the way into 2024. It's so crazy to me that we can sit here and watch this corruption happen, and the American people are going to sit by here and let this happen for another 2 years. I don't think so. I think they have till summer, and I think that during summer people are going to start organizing, and you're going to see millions of people marching on Washington. I just think it's cold right now, and there's all this chaos going on, and people are still not awake. That's the only logic I can come up with, is that like if I was playing video games with my little man and then he fell asleep, and I was talking to some of the older guys that I was playing with, and they were in New York and they worked at Amazon, and I was like, "Oh, did you get the jab?" And they're like, "Yeah, we both got it." I was like, "Was that mandatory there?" He's like, "Yeah, pretty much." He's like, I would have lost my job or got fired if I didn't get it. And I was like, there's a bunch of, I talked to him about it. I don't want to say it on here because I'll probably get my stream shut down. But I explained to him what was going on and asked him if he knew any of that. And he's like, "No, I didn't hear any of that." And I'm like, "Wait, you live in New York and you didn't know anything about the jab being dangerous or anything of the sort?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, "What about Biden, all the corruption going on in the White House?" He's like, "No, I haven't heard anything." And I was like, wow, there's still people out there that honestly, they don't watch the news. They just go to work. They punch the time clock. They come home. They go out on Friday nights. They drink with their buddies. But they're not paying attention to the news. They're not paying attention to politics. So Since I've been awake, I didn't wake up until maybe like November. I mean, I was awake, but I wasn't like really like this awake where like once you see it, you can't not see it. And like it just consumes your day. Like every day you're just like, all right, I mean, I don't know, maybe because I make content that I'm always looking for new content, new ways to make more content. But like, I feel like every day I'm just waiting, like, is there going to be a nail in the coffin? Is there going to be like, at what point do we draw the line in the sand and we say like, we're not like, if the government crosses this line, we're going to organize and protest? At what point do we get, like, what is the line? I can't think of any worse lines than are already being crossed. The pedos indoctrinating our children, corrupt FBI, corrupt White House, corrupt DOJ, open borders, left our soldiers behind in Afghanistan. I mean, the whole thing with the Pfizer. I mean, what else are they going to do before the country says enough's enough? I don't think the citizens in the United States have ever been tyrannized by a government like we're being tyrannized right now since the American Revolution. This is by far the worst and the most corrupt our government has ever been, or at the very least that the masses knew about. Kings game on 3-2. I'll be in Washington D.C., Jason. I'm going to CPAC on 3-1 to 3-4, or I totally would. Rage Against the Machine. Is there really? Is there really a march on Washington, Corey, on February 19th? No way. And it's so cold out. How warm is it in Washington, D.C. right now? Oh, it's 61 out. Wow. Wow, that's nice down there. I turned off the TV and started paying attention after the first time in my life I voted for President Trump. Me too. Me too. It's funny you said that. First time I voted for president, it was Trump. Yeah, November is when I took the red pill, for sure. Yeah, M-Star says November. November is when you took the red pill, Ryan. I thought I had already taken it, but it wasn't until November that I truly swallowed that pill myself. Now I'm wide awake and pissed. Everybody is. You can't see this. And like, it's almost like you're, I don't know, if you weren't into politics like me and you're just into other things, when you start learning about it, you're like, at first you feel like, I don't know, like I felt like I was a kid looking up like the Tupac conspiracies. Anybody else? Does anybody else fall in those, you know, like the, like who shot Tupac and going down those rabbit holes of trying to solve like I don't know, I just like a younger kid. I used to have like a folder of like all the stories and stuff like that. I was trying to solve the Tupac murder at one time. Thought I was a little mini detective. But I feel like that you're like, they brainwashed us into thinking that everything's a conspiracy theory. And if you even talk about it, then you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh, Richard, that's so scary. I have a great video on that. And did you see the post I posted on Twitter? Like, people don't understand how dangerous that chemical is that's burning in the atmosphere. And there is no safe levels, Richard. Not, it goes in like ppm, parts per million or whatever. So like if that gets into the groundwater and there is the tiniest fraction little ounce of a bit, deadly. Causes cancer. It's a carcinogen, like in a fast way. Like the people that were there filming, those reporters, the fact that they are not, I mean, even getting that on your, like if you, like those people that were taking videos walking down by that river, and it's deadly in three forms. It's deadly in its liquid form. It's deadly if it gets burnt because it turns into acid rain. And then after the rain comes down and it lands on, say, a rock, or it goes into your groundwater, and then the water dries up, it evaporates and turns into, I forget the fumes, but it can go under your, like, it could get into the water under your house and in like, you know, I don't know, like somehow rainwater and like seeps into the ground and it gets under your house. And like if that aquifer under there dries out and that ground dries, those fumes can come up through your basement and it's odorless and it's tasteless. So you're not going to smell it. You're not going to hear it. You're not going to see it. You're not going to feel it. Nothing. Now, obviously, like you hear people in Ohio talking about like the smells of chemicals. Well, that's a combination of everything, not just the chloride, not just that vinyl chloride stuff. So that's seriously serious danger for those people, not just them, everywhere around that. Within, I would say within at least a 200-mile radius. Yeah, I did, Jason. I did. Yeah, he goes, bro, I remember when you first started your streams. I remember you shutting down streams because people were arguing about politics. I couldn't take it. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Anderson, what up? Yeah, it's, what do you say, phosgene? Is that phosgene? Am I saying that right? Phosgene gas, almost as bad as ammonia. Yeah, Scott says oil and gas companies spend billions to assure the environment is not damaged. He goes, I'm in the business. What they did with that train and the fact that they blew it up, you know, Ryan, I have a video coming out on it. We can take a look at this article by Ryan. He's one of my good buddies. He was, I don't know what his job title was. He like helps run attorney general campaigns. He really knows his stuff. A really smart dude. You guys will see why I pre-record all my videos. I suck at reading so bad. As a former energy manager and hazardous materials technician, let me explain a high-level overview of the response to the Ohio train derailment and the release of hazardous materials into the community and why some decisions may have been made. Specifically, let the material burn. An emergency manager presented with the scene below needs to first identify the materials the train is carrying. This can be accomplished in several ways. The engineer has the bill of landing and log of hazardous materials. Locate the UN place card number. Contact the RR. So let's assume only the place card UN number is available on the rail car. The UN number reads 1086. We immediately consult our emergency response guidebook looking for the UN number 1086, which identifies the materials as vinyl chloride and directs the US to guide 116P for emergency response. So you can see exactly where it, you know, tells you to go look at what numbers, what's in that chemical, and you see it right down here. 116P, vinyl chloride stabilized. So before we even look at the response guide, the P in the guide number, guide 116P, concerns me. The P means the materials may undergo violent polymerization if heated or contaminated, which could cause a container to rupture or explode. No good. Belief concerns. Let's review the guide. We see the immediate evacuation precautions that should be taken. A reverse 911 that calls all citizens into evacuation areas should be initiated. I'm also concerned that the materials may be explosive when mixed with air. So you see right here, fire or explosion extremely flammable, may be ignited by heat, sparks, or flames, may form explosive mixture with air, blah, 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 blah. Evacuate. Immediate precautionary measures. Isolate spills or leaks for at least 100 meters, 330 feet in all directions. Consider initial downwind evacuation for at least 800 meters, half a mile. So like just look at their response to this. This is the first part that really makes me go, what? So if this chemical is deadly if burnt and it turns into acid rain, and the acid rain is going to move those clouds for miles, hundreds of miles. They lit that thing on fire because they were worried about a 330-foot explosion. A 330-foot explosion. They could have put that fire out. They could have suffocated it with some type of something or other. They could have suffocated it. Instead, they lit it on fire. They lit that stuff on fire. Freaking mind-blowing. Very unsafe. Yeah, so Scott says if pipelines blow out, we can shut them down and stop flow. Yeah, don't they have automatic shutoffs on them too, Scott? Like pressure valves and stuff like that. If pressure shuts off and there's not enough pressure, the valves will close and automatically shut the lines off. Like these type of chemicals being transported on trains needs to shut down immediately. Like this cannot happen again. If this would have happened in Michigan near a Great Lake, I mean, it would have contaminated a majority of the world's water. And they did get nuked. Exactly it. Over profit. Over profit. In Canada, Emergency Response Assistant Plan, ERAP, may be required for this product. Please consult the shipping papers and or the ERAP program. Anyways, as we start to dive deeper into the science of the material vinyl chloride, we find that it is highly volatile and has a boiling point of 7.9 degrees Fahrenheit. So it has a boiling point. I maybe that's 79 degrees Fahrenheit or 7.9 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not really sure if you meant that. In one of the tanks, if one of the tanks is damaged, we have a disaster on our hands. We have a ticking time bomb sitting on the ground. We are at risk of catastrophic believe, also known as boiling liquid, vaporous explosions. I'm unfamiliar with the quantity of material, but if it had exploded, it could have destroyed the city. Let's not forget the boiling point is 7.9 F. Maybe, you know, does that make sense to you? What that means there, Scott? 7.9 degrees Fahrenheit? That's frozen. So a decision was made to allow controlled burn of the pressure release valves to minimize the potential of the believe. At this point of the response, the options were limited, and we haven't even begun to discuss its impact with other chemicals in the containers. Given my limited facts, I see no option but to allow the materials to burn, but this doesn't dissolve the government and its responsibility to inform the public. In this scenario, honest and open communications with the media and the community stakeholders should have been swiftly. Immediate precautions should have been taken to protect waterways, and modeling should have been done to perform before performed for toxic fallout. This is where the government failed. They failed to warn the public about the hazards. The media was silent. Emergency managers need to stop operating in the dark. That's the scary part. Frozen gas? Those liquids in those trains are frozen? In this situation, boiling does not mean burning flesh. 7.9. So MSTAR says shelter in place lifted in Harris County, Texas after anhydrous ammonia leak happened February 12th, but I am just now hearing about it. It's so crazy what these people are doing to us. Yeah, frozen liquid. Okay. That's wild. .9 is correct. It boils very easily. I read a different report that said the same exact thing. All things have three forms: gas, solid, and liquid. Everyone has a different temperature for each. Thanks, Steve. That makes sense. I was wondering that. I was like, 8 degrees equals threat of explosion. This is so crazy. I still can't believe they lit it on fire. I really can't. and without evacuating that entire town. Not just that town. I mean, did you guys see the size of those clouds? There's this one video, I probably got to search Ohio. I still just can't wrap my head around how that this sat here for 2 days. For 2 full days. They were able to puncture holes. They shot holes in the pressure release valve to let those toxins out. To me, what it looks like, I mean, if those things were there tipped over for 2 days and they didn't explode, and if it had only taken out a 330-foot radius, if it did explode, like I don't get how it exploding would have been any more dangerous than. And you got heavy equipment that you can operate via remote control. Like you wouldn't have had to bring bodies in there to flip those trains and get them back up on track. That could have all been done remotely with robots from a safe environment. I mean, that just seems like such a bad idea to light that many chemicals on fire. This entire town is going to be plagued with cancer, and it's scary. Look at that. Look at this one. This is from Benny. Look at how far that goes. So anywhere that those clouds come down, and it hasn't even rained. So all of these chemicals are now up there in the air and in these clouds. And when it comes down, it's coming down as acid rain. And then they told everybody it was safe to go home. And there is no safe level. I don't want to play the video on here. But if you guys haven't saw this video, and tomorrow we'll play the whole thing. But I'm probably going to get my stream throttled if I play it, so I don't want to play it on here right now because this one's not throttled. But listen to what this expert says about it. This is, I forget the law firm that he's associated with, but watch this video. And if you have any friends in Ohio, they need to get their kids out of there. I would be anyways. I just wouldn't take the chance. It wouldn't be worth it to risk it for me. Because by the time you figure out, I mean, anybody that was even close to any of those areas should be going and getting medical testing done. Yeah, Steve says, only animals died, but you're safe. Yeah. Linda nailed it. Says most likely they use fear to drive it. Scared leaders into taking draconian actions. Yeah, there we go. I sounded that one out. Draconian actions, least they be blamed for causing millions of deaths. Is the fire still burning? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense to just let it keep burning. Like, why didn't they fly a plane over there and put those flames out? Like after that happened, couldn't we have dumped some of those like where they go over with planes over forest fires? Couldn't they have put something on that to put that stuff out? There's no, I mean, these chemicals have been around since World War I. I don't know. It just seems so crazy to me that we're transporting chemicals that can do this much damage on a train when there's 1,200 train derailments a year. It seems like it's just a ticking time bomb. Yeah, geezer, everything has to be, like if you ever worked in a factory, when you go into a factory and you grab a bottle of Windex, that bottle has to be labeled with like 6 different labels on it. Like all the ingredients that are in there. It has to have like a health fact check where you can like find more information about them on there. It has to be labeled with the title, exactly what it is, the size of it. And that's just like a Windex bottle. And if you have an empty Windex bottle, or you have a Windex bottle without a label on it and OSHA shows up, you get fined. So anytime you're transporting any materials like that, they have to be labeled. You have to do all that. They knew exactly what was on that when it happened. The second, you probably wouldn't even take 2 seconds to figure out what was on that train. Crazy. This kid is crazy right here. I mean, this is absolutely bonkers, kid. Like, I know, like, look at how young that kid is. I feel so bad for these people. I wanted to go here so bad. Like, Laura Loomer texted me right when it happened. And I was like, let's go to Ohio. And she's like, people are dying. I'm like, I got a mask. Not really, not fully understanding how dangerous this stuff was. Yeah, maybe a powdered substance. Oh, Mr. K, let me check it out. Kid's so young. Do you know how sick he's going to get from being there? Look at how close he is to that. And that's, you step on the grass and that stuff's on your shoes. It's on everything. The soot is everywhere. Gosh, check that out. And who knows where that stuff's going? That's exactly it, Anderson. Anderson, they blew it up because the CO2 and cleanup would cost too much. It would have. That's exactly what would have happened. It would have been such a timely process, and that train track would have been down for so long. That's exactly what they did, 100%. And the truth's going to come out. There's going to be serious. I mean, there's going to be so many people getting sick from this. And then they didn't even tell the people what toxins were on that train and what chemicals were in it before they told people to go back to their home. Corn Pop says it's 1 ppm that is so dangerous they will have to let it burn. I'll have to let it burn off now. Yeah. Oh, Chemistry Bro says, yeah, it's done. I mean, when people really realize how bad this is, and this is what we need, a president, guys. We need Trump back in office. Like, this is all by design, in my opinion. Like, I mean, they may not have caused this crash, but I'm saying, like, what the destruction that they're causing to the United States, they're just finding out better ways to do it. You need to vacuum up fast. I mean, I don't know. Like, even the people that are here, like these firefighters, these kids. I was watching this girl earlier that was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And I'm like, what? This one right here. Like, wow. And I'm like, what? Like, I would, like, that's code red, guys. Like, how did somebody not just Google? I mean, maybe it's just because we knew exactly what was in it, and somebody else said that they didn't even tell. Like, people in the city didn't even know what was in it. until they were told to go home. So like they just seen this cloud of smoke. They probably had no idea what the chemicals were in that cloud. I see now. I see. No problem. Booty Judge says it's okay. Yeah, geezer. H2 gases will melt your lungs. We have proper equipment to deal with it. That's so crazy, Scott. Scott, if you had proper gear on, like if they wanted you to go there and report, would you even have went into that town without proper gear on? That is the cloud of death. And if anybody knows anybody from the town that would like to come on the show and report and tell their story, Chemistry Bro says, I've worked with vinyl chloride derivatives. They are not nice chemicals at all. Wow. This lady woke up, and this is the part that blows my mind. Check this one out.
I walked up to the cage, and this is what I found.
Amanda Brashears was going to feed her 5 hens and rooster this morning when she discovered them all lifeless, practically in the same position, with no signs of a predator entering their enclosure.
I'm beyond upset and quite panicked because they may be just chickens, but they're family.
Brashears says her chickens were alive and well yesterday. She believes the smell following the detonation.
So you walk outside your house and you see a bunch of dead chickens. What killed them? The same air that you're breathing in, lady. Like, how are people not freaking out about this? Like, I would not be in that town. Me and my son would have been so far out of it. It would have been my one chance to just, I got to start over. Everything in the car, I would have left everything behind. I wouldn't have left everything, but I would have loaded this equipment up into my car so quick. I got suitcases already packed, ready to go to whenever. So I would have grabbed the bug out bags and been out of here. What's even more crazy is you guys seen the eggs. So like if there's food processing plants, like everything in Ohio needs to be quarantined. Like we should know where our meat's coming from. Like if one of those cows breathed this stuff in and just died, you think they're going to let that cow just lay on the ground and go bad? Or are they going to send it to the butcher shop and now all of a sudden somebody's going to be eating a cow that just inhaled all this chemicals? Never Again says, how is it you're required to stand 6 feet away from somebody over a vi and wear a mask, get chemicals? No, that's fine. Yeah, Scott says the whole team should have been evacuated until qualified teams were on site. And then they told everybody that the water was fine. This is just so disgusting. And the fact that we don't have a president in charge to lead this country is exactly why these things are happening. All the way into Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Louisville, Cincinnati. Scary, man. Juliana says no propaganda about farmers, but I'm saying like say this lady walked out there with her chickens, like obviously she's just collecting them for herself, but like, I mean, the animals are going to be have that stuff in them. Like, how do you test for, hey, yeah, who is that? Scott, how could you test for this stuff? Is there like test strips that you could order on Amazon or anywhere and test like the water to see if these chemicals are in the water? Well, what's funny is what state always was it? What state normally determines the results of election? Yeah, Pfizer's working on a cure, guys. That's what'll happen next. Pfizer will have a cure for this, for everybody that was around this area. It'll be mandatory. You have to take it. No choice. Enforcement. Man, they're all worried about regulating crypto. Could crypto have ever done something like this? Nope. Should have been worried about rail. I mean, I just find it like you go to ship a package or anything with anything hazardous in it, it's so expensive. They just make giant compost out of them. As you watch this black cloud of death encompass this little town, don't miss the 500 private homes in the shot. 32 small businesses, 12 restaurants, 3 parks, 2 playgrounds, an elementary school, a high school. Pray for East Palestine.
Reporting for Rebel News. Now, as you can see by the sign beside me, we are in the village of East Palestine, Ohio. Now, this name may sound familiar to some of you, as a train containing hazardous chemicals derailed, and essentially all of those chemicals have spilled, causing thousands of the residents here to evacuate. Who is to blame? Do the residents feel safe? Is it safe to be here right now? That's what we're gonna find out as we're here on the ground at the scene of the accident. Just last week, a major train derailment of 50 cars carrying very hazardous chemicals has resulted in thousands of people being evacuated by officials over the fear of the explosion setting off.
It was a mess. I took my wife to the doctor, and coming back from the doctor, we couldn't even get back to our house. And we had no clothes, no medicine, nothing. We had to go to Youngstown to get a room.
One of those chemicals is vinyl chloride, which is extremely toxic to humans.
We're still very nervous about it because they keep coming up with contaminated water problems, and I don't know, I'm even half afraid to shop.
Fast forward to today, the evacuation order has been lifted. We've already spoken to residents on the ground, and many of them simply feel that there isn't much transparency here.
My kids, we're just running in to grab something, and then we're going back to grandma's house because they keep breaking out in rashes.
Kids do?
Yeah.
So you kind of answered my next question. Do you feel like it's safe here right now?
I feel like we're not being told everything. I know something came out yesterday about them covering up contaminated soil when they rebuilt the railroad instead of pulling it out like they promised.
But many of the residents are pointing the blame at Norfolk Southern, the company responsible for the train. Do you think it's safe here right now?
I don't know. They're to me, they're keeping everything kind of hush hush. You know, they're not telling everybody everything.
Who's to blame? Who's responsible? The Joe Biden administration has been very quiet on one of the most serious and dangerous environmental disasters to date. The Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, spoke about the Chinese spy balloons instead of addressing the clear elephant in the room, the train derailment here in East Palestine.
I mean, if you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
My producer Efron and I have made the trip here from Toronto to East Palestine to show you guys the other side of the story, to talk to the residents here, to find out what exactly is going on. Is it safe to be here? We're going to be uploading all of our content to ohioexplosion.com. If you want to support the journalism that we're doing down here, if you want to support our travel costs so we can continue providing you guys the other side of the story, you can consider donating through that website, ohioexplosion.com. Stay tuned, guys, and thank you.
Wild, guys. All right, y'all. I gotta get running. I gotta get my little man off the bus here in a few minutes. So I'm gonna be doing an awesome show on Rumble tonight. It'll be at around 7 p.m. It's gonna be a wild story. I don't know. This stuff's so far above my head, conspiracy theory, but you know, all those crazy conspiracy theories turned out to be true. So let me see if I can retweet something on it really quick. Yeah, I can tweet about it. I'll make a tweet about what it's going to be about right now. Really cool. Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah. So we're going over some wild conspiracy theory. Like I said, it's all above my head. I don't know how true it is, but the guys, I mean, the website was really clean. I went through it all. I mean, it makes sense, but it's still far above my head. So we'll see. I mean, every conspiracy theory turned out to be true. So yeah, it plays out. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you guys for stopping by the channel. Brian, thank you for the super chats. I appreciate everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys later tonight.